There's something strange about the silence underwater. No words, just breath, just pressure. Down there, even the bravest can lose their way. These are the stories of divers who went too far, who took one last descent and never surfaced again.
Dark greetings, love. I am Lord FreakZilla, your guide through the eerie and mysterious world of Gothic Sagas. I bring you chilling tales of unexplained disappearances, strange encounters, bizarre accidents, and spine-tingling, creepy stories. If this stirs your curiosity, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, terrorize the like button, and ring our bell. Now, settle in, dim the lights, and join me as we journey into the shadows where darkness reigns and secrets lurk.
Imagine a descent into a hidden world beneath the earth. A journey into an underwater cave so vast and mysterious that for years it was believed to be bottomless. In 1973, a group of experienced divers, full of excitement and ambition, entered what would become a legendary death trap. As sunlight filtered through the entrance, they didn't realize that a sudden shift in weather would plunge them into total darkness. In a matter of moments, disorientation, panic, and a series of fateful decisions would turn their exploration into one of the deadliest cave diving disasters in history. What happened in those depths? And what drove these divers to risk everything? This is the story of the Shaft, an exploration that ended in heartbreak and forever changed the world of cave diving. The population across South Australia is quite unusual. The state's largest city, Adelaide, has a population of just over 1 million, while the second largest city, Mount Gambier, has only about 33,000 residents.
So even though Mount Gambier holds the title of the second largest city, it is relatively small by comparison. However, despite its modest size, Mount Gambier plays a significant role as the principal community of the Limestone Coast region.
Located just north of the southern coastline and close to the border with Victoria, the city is uniquely positioned on the slopes of an actual volcano, also named Mount Gambier. The area is well known for its striking volcanic landscape, which features limestone formations, vivid blue lakes, caves, and sinkholes. Just outside the city, fields of farmland stretch out to the coastline in the south. Among these fields lies a small 5-acre plot between Mount Gambier and the ocean, owned by a dairy farming family and known locally as Thompson's Paddock. In 1938, a farmer was working in Thompson's Paddock, driving equipment pulled by his horses, when suddenly one of the horses stumbled over something hidden in the grass. Curious about what had caused the horse to trip, the farmer halted his work, dismounted, and went over to investigate. What he discovered was a hole in the ground, about 1 foot wide, that he had never noticed before. Kneeling down to examine it more closely, he saw that the hole dropped down at least 20 feet, with water visible at the bottom. This discovery was remarkable and somewhat eerie, yet it was only the beginning of what would unfold. It's unclear how long the farmer had owned this plot or why he hadn't noticed the hole before. There's no way to know if the ground had simply caved in under the horse's weight or if the hole had been there all along, overlooked. Either way, the discovery raised a troubling question. If the ground had collapsed once, could the area around the hole be unstable and at risk of further collapse? To make matters more unsettling, The farmer could see that the narrow hole expanded 2 or 3 feet down, but then seemed to widen, forming a shape like an inverted funnel. In a worst-case scenario, someone could accidentally step into the opening, falling 20 feet to the water below. Given the shape of the pit's upper section, it would be nearly impossible to climb back out. They'd be left treading water, calling for help, with no escape. Understandably, the discovery was disturbing for the farmer, who decided to try filling in the hole with rocks. Over the next few days, he hauled stones about the size of soccer balls to the hole, dropping them one by one into the water below. Each rock made a splash before disappearing into the darkness.
After a dozen or so rocks, they kept vanishing without filling the void, leaving the mystery of the pit unsolved.
They continued dropping rocks into the water, first by the dozens, then by the hundreds, but there was no sign of them below. By the time they finally stopped, likely thousands of rocks had been thrown in, yet none were visible in the water. It was as if the hole had no bottom. In the end, the farmer could only be careful around the opening and hope it wouldn't expand. Word quickly spread about the bizarre discovery, drawing people to investigate the unusual pit. Eventually, experts identified it as a limestone sinkhole, formed as water gradually dissolved the rock below, creating this hidden cavity just beneath the surface.
Over time, the narrow opening was widened to about 3 feet for easier access. In the mid-1960s,
A diver was lowered into the sinkhole for the first time. From the edge, he descended 23 feet before reaching the water's surface. What he found was that the sinkhole actually opened into a small, hidden lake. Just below the entrance, the cave was quite narrow, but at the water's surface, it opened up to a spacious 56 feet across. On sunny days, around noon, sunlight would stream through the opening, creating a striking sapphire blue beam that illuminated both the water and the chamber below. This beautiful effect earned the cave the name the Shaft, in honor of the brilliant shaft of light. From the water's surface, the diver began exploring the cave further, descending and discovering that the space continued to expand with depth. During the first exploration, he reached about 69 feet down before deciding to resurface. The most surprising discovery, however, was the sight of the hundreds of rocks that had been tossed into the cave years earlier. From his vantage point, they appeared like a small anthill at the bottom of the vast room, still around 50 feet beneath him. Later mapping of the cave revealed an enormous central chamber where the rock pile rested, along with 2 deep passages branching out in nearly opposite directions. The main chamber itself spans 460 feet in length and 260 feet in width at its widest point, with the top of the rock pile sitting 118 feet below the surface. From this central area, a tunnel extends northwest, reaching depths of 260 feet, while on the opposite side, another tunnel plunges down to an astonishing 407 feet. It's believed that these tunnels might extend all the way to the southern coast, forming part of a complex freshwater drainage system running through the local mountains. The cave's passages are dotted with cliffs, overhangs, and narrow sections, creating intriguing obstacles for divers. Combined with the crystal clear water and the cave's immense size, it's paradise for splunkers.
a detailed map of the cave wasn't produced until 1984, but even a decade earlier, by 1973, divers had already completed 8,000 dives inside the shaft. Despite all those dives, the cave's full depth remained a mystery, and no comprehensive map had been created yet.
For many, it seemed as if the cave had no bottom. The emerging sport of cave diving, along with the equipment limitations of the time, meant that explorers often reached the furthest known points and then peered into the darkness, unsure of what lay beyond. In May 1973, a team of 9 divers aimed to undertake what they hoped would be a record-breaking dive in the shaft. On May the 26th, they gathered in Mount Gambier, setting up camp near the famous Blue Crater Lake. Their mission was to descend to the perimeter, a depth of 250 feet, which marked the boundary where sunlight from the surface fades. Beyond this point, the ceiling's angle blocks the light, plunging the water into near total darkness.
This depth also corresponded with a feature known as the drop-off, a section where the cave's bottom vanishes from view when observed from the edge above. This is where the shaft gained its bottomless reputation, as standing at the edge offers no hint of an end, just the suggestion of a vast unknown extending far below. All 9 divers involved in this attempt were experienced dive instructors.
However, given the challenging nature of the dive, they planned a practice run to prepare equipment and familiarize themselves with the environment. On May the 27th, they arrived at the farmhouse at Thompson's Paddock, signed the guest book, and drove out to the field where the cave entrance is located. They parked next to the opening and assembled a tripod hoist system, used to lower divers into the water below. Despite the hole being widened, it remained too narrow for divers to descend while wearing their gear, so all equipment had to be lowered separately. For their ascent, they set up a wire ladder for climbing back out of the cave. Once in the water, they were struck by the immense size of the chamber, even at the surface. Their primary task for the day was to establish a shot line, a weighted guide rope anchored from the surface to the rock pile below. This line would streamline their descent during the actual record attempt, giving them more time to navigate to the cave's edge. During this practice dive, the team reached a depth of around 200 feet, just above the perimeter of the rock pile and still within the reach of the light from the entrance. From their position, they could make out the edge they hoped to reach, the point where the cave floor extends horizontally before vanishing into the unknown. Satisfied with their initial exploration, they returned to Mount Gambier to recharge their equipment and refill their air tanks in preparation for the main dive. On May the 28th, the team returned to the cave entrance around noon, suited up and ready to descend. One of the divers, Joan, opted not to dive that day, so the group was reduced to 8. Instead, Joan stayed above ground to assist with supplies and prepare meals for the rest of the team. The divers making the descent that day were Robert, John, Peter, Gordon, Larry, along with 3 siblings, Glenn, Stephen, and Christian. They descended back to the rock pile at a depth of 130 feet before heading towards the tunnel that led to the ledge they aimed to explore. Around 180 feet, Robert began experiencing the effects of nitrogen narcosis, a condition where dissolved nitrogen in the bloodstream leads to a disoriented, almost drunken sensation. This happened earlier than he expected, and the feeling was strong enough that he chose to ascend slightly to let the symptoms subside. It's important to note that during this era, diving, especially cave diving, was still relatively new, and standard protocols were not as well defined as they are today. Many divers, including those who were relatively inexperienced, were attempting challenging dives without strict oversight. Although the team members were dive instructors, their experience was primarily in clear, open water, not in the dark, confined spaces of a cave. Additionally, there was no requirement for specialized cave diving certification. Anyone could explore these dangerous environments with little regulation. Perhaps most concerning were the safety standards, which were far less stringent than today's guidelines. This group intended to dive to a depth of 250 feet using regular air, which is now considered extremely risky. Modern guidelines suggest a maximum depth of 130 feet for using standard air, as deeper dives increase the risk of nitrogen narcosis, which can impair judgment and physical coordination. Beyond 185 feet, regular air can even become toxic, potentially triggering convulsive seizures. If a seizure occurred at depth, a diver could easily lose their regulator, leading to drowning. Given the circumstances, all 8 divers were now at a depth of 180 feet, relying on regular air. Robert, feeling the effects of nitrogen narcosis, signaled his intention to return to the rock pile, and the others acknowledged, indicating they would continue their descent. Robert spent the next few minutes circling the rock pile, searching for any animal bones that might have settled on the bottom. Roughly 8 minutes later, he spotted Glenn's flashlight approaching him. By then, both men were nearly out of air, with Glenn closely monitoring his gauges. They met up and surfaced together, soon followed by Larry. About 30 seconds later, Peter emerged with his tank nearly empty, reporting that he had lost sight of the other divers. At that moment, dread set in, especially for Glenn, who realized his brother and sister were still underwater, likely with almost no air remaining.
Previously, the group that had continued past 180 feet had been swimming and taking photos until they reached 200 feet. Glenn and the others moved along the ledge, with Glenn noticing his sister Christine just a few feet away.
Everything seemed routine. The overhead light was still clear, and only about 5 minutes had elapsed since they began their dive. However, Glenn began to feel drowsy from the effects of narcosis. Checking his gauges, he saw that his air supply was running low and assumed the others were likely in a similar situation. Deciding not to push any further, he prepared to ascend, but first wanted to signal to Christine, encouraging her to turn back as well. Glenn reached out to tap Christine on the shoulder, but before he could, she suddenly kicked her fins and swam away, just out of reach. Feeling his air was running low, he decided not to linger and headed for the surface, assuming the others would follow soon after. He met Robert on his way up, and they surfaced together. It was around this time that things took a tragic turn in the cave, leading to what would become one of the deadliest incidents in cave diving history. Just before Glenn ascended, Peter was also struggling with the effects of narcosis and wanted to double-check Glenn's depth gauge. But before he could get close enough, Glenn had already started his ascent. Peter lingered for a moment, scanning the bottom's clear waters, when he saw 2 other divers heading towards what he thought was the exit. Checking his own air supply, Peter suddenly realized he had no more time to spare.
When he looked back, he was shocked to see that the cave had plunged into near darkness. He was disoriented. He was unsure of the exit's direction. Shortly after the group began to dive, a thick layer of clouds had moved in, blocking the sunlight that usually filtered out through the entrance.
Peter began to swim in search of the exit, but visibility had deteriorated rapidly as silt clouded the water, causing the group to become separated. Meanwhile, 3 divers, Christine, Gordon, and Larry, were together at the deepest point they had explored. Realizing they were dangerously low on air, Gordon and Larry checked their gauges and signaled it was time to ascend. Panicked, they swam nearly straight upward instead of following the cave's sloped ceiling as they should have. In limestone caves, rock fragments can sometimes break off, forming dome-like hollows in the ceiling. It's believed that the divers expelled gases had collected in one of these pockets, creating a reflective surface that mimicked the appearance of the water's surface near the entrance. In their disoriented state, the divers' flashlights reflected off this deceptive mirror, making them believe they were headed the right way.
They swam directly upward, only to collide with the cave ceiling. In a panic, Gordon and Christine began frantically waving their flashlights, searching for the real exit. At that critical moment, Larry's flashlight failed. He drifted downwards for a few seconds, and when his flashlight flickered back on, he managed to glimpse another diver in the distance. This new perspective allowed him to spot the true entrance far ahead. He sprinted for the exit, reaching the surface just as Glenn and Robert did. Peter, who had found his way out of the murky water, surfaced right behind Larry. When they realized 4 divers were still missing, including Glenn's brother and sister. Glenn grabbed a spare air tank and dove back down to search.
Descending to the cliff edge at 225 feet, he discovered his brother's flashlight and camera laying on the cave floor. Beyond that point, the silt was so thick that visibility was non-existent. Determined to find his siblings, Glenn pushed over the ledge and into the swirling cloud of sediment. Inside the silt, he couldn't even see his own hand, and panic quickly set in. He swam back to the edge of the rock pile, hovering there staring into the darkness, hoping for any sign of life. But nothing appeared. Eventually, he was forced to return to the surface. Peter made another attempt, diving after Glenn's return, but found nothing. By then, an ambulance had arrived and the grim realization set in. There was no hope of finding anyone alive. Shortly afterward, the police came and organized a body recovery mission for the next day. The following day, police divers descended into the shaft, reaching a depth of 200 feet. However, the cave remained heavily silted, limiting visibility. Already at the edge of their capabilities, they were unable to locate any of the missing bodies during that dive, nor in a subsequent search the next day. After the second attempt, the police suspended further dives, recognizing the need for additional training for the Navy due to the unprecedented depth of the recovery operation. It would take several months for the team to acquire the necessary skills for such a challenging mission. In January of the following year, while the recovery was still pending, the landowners permitted a film crew shooting a cave diving documentary to access the shaft. The crew, who had already filmed several other local caves, aimed to include footage of the shaft as well. On January the 22nd, the team descended to about 50 feet, illuminating the cave with professional lighting that mimicked daylight. As they were setting up, a technician noticed what appeared to be a third figure behind 2 of his colleagues. Alarmed, they investigated and discovered a body in a wetsuit. Filming was immediately halted, and they surfaced to inform the police. The next day, the authorities retrieved the body, which had been wedged under a ledge just 50 feet below the surface. Further searches that day extended down to 180 feet, but no other bodies were found. The recovered diver was later identified as Stefan, one of the siblings. By March, the landowners grew increasingly uneasy, knowing that 3 individuals remained somewhere in the cave. They sought assistance from a more experienced diving team equipped with advanced gear. On March the 9th, 1974, the new team began their own search. At a depth of 185 feet, they found a body lying on the cave floor with another directly below. 20 feet deeper, they discovered the final missing person, John, hidden beneath a rock overhang. It wasn't until a month later, in April, that John's body was finally recovered due to the challenges posed by the depth and the way he was lodged. Nearly a year before, on that tragic day, it's believed that Christian and Gordon ran out of air while trapped in the dome-like pocket in the ceiling. Some speculate that they spent their final moments embracing each other, fully aware that they were out of air and without any hope of escape. This could explain why their bodies were found so close together. It remains uncertain who initially spotted John, but one of the survivors recalled seeing another diver swimming confidently deeper into the cave while everyone else was heading up. This diver was likely John, who was found at the greatest depth. The prevailing theory is that he was severely impacted by nitrogen narcosis, causing him to swim in the wrong direction. Stefan's last moments remained largely a mystery. Unlike the others, he was found much closer to the surface, along the ceiling instead of at the bottom. His buoyancy device was inflated, which kept him suspended near the roof of the cave. It's possible that, disoriented in the darkness or amidst the silt, he tried to navigate by floating up to the ceiling and feeling his way along it. He may have run out of air before he could escape. Since no one witnessed his final moments, his exact fate remains unknown. This tragedy is often cited as the deadliest incident in the history of cave diving. In the years leading up to this disaster, several other fatal accidents occurred in the nearby sinkholes around Mount Gambier. The catastrophe at the shaft was a turning point, leading to the creation of the Cave Divers Association of Australia to regulate the practice and enhance safety standards. Looking back, it's evident that the divers weren't prepared for such a challenging dive without proper cave diving training. Criticism has been raised about their use of standard air instead of specialized gas mixes, but at the time, alternative gas mixtures weren't readily available. Another crucial error was the decision not to use guidelines in the cave's unexplored sections. These lines would have provided a path back to safety if the cave became silted or if visibility dropped. Despite knowing the importance of guidelines, the divers chose not to use them, fearing they would become tangled due to large size of the group. Ideally, they should have limited the group size to make guideline use safer. Fortunately, the formation of the CDAA and other safety organizations has significantly decreased the number of cave diving fatalities since then. Beneath the tranquil surface of the blue hole lies a darkness few dare to explore. This natural wonder lures divers from around the globe with promises of beauty and adventure. But for Yuri, an experienced diver, his dream of exploring the infamous blue hole in Dahab turned into a devastating tragedy. From his fateful decision to dive alone to the haunting video footage recovered from his camera, Yuri's story is a chilling reminder of the dangers hidden beneath the surface. What led him to plunge into the abyss, and what secrets did his final dive reveal? This is the haunting true story of one of the world's most treacherous dive sites. Meet Tarek Omar, a technical diver and instructor by profession, but informally known as the Bone Collector. He's also referred to as the Gravekeeper, and the grave he watches over is the Blue Hole in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. The Blue Hole is renowned as one of the world's top diving destinations, attracting both beginners and seasoned divers. However, it's also considered the deadliest dive site on Earth. Over the years, it's believed that at least 130 lives have been claimed by the Blue Hole, with some sources suggesting the toll could exceed 200. Since there are no official records, the true number remains uncertain, and it might be even higher. Since the late 90s, Tarek has been involved in nearly every body recovery at the site. While this doesn't represent all the divers who've perished here, it's enough that he's long since lost track of the count. After 2 decades of recovering bodies, Tarek Omar only remembers the names of the first 2 divers he retrieved shortly after moving to the nearby city, Martin Guerra and Conor O'Regan. In 1997, Martin left Ireland for Egypt to spend the year working as a dive instructor, drawn by the area's incredible diving opportunities. Partway through his time there, his friend Conor joined him so they could finish out the year together. Conor was nearing the final stage of becoming a certified instructor himself. Both men were experienced and regarded as cautious, detail-oriented divers by those who knew them. Their shared passion for diving turned this trip into a trial run for a larger goal. They planned to explore the area before launching a travel agency in Ireland focused on organizing international dive tours. In November of that year, about a month before returning home, the 2 friends visited the famed Blue Hole dive site. They joined a group trip led by PADI, a global diving organization which included several professional and trained divers. During the dive, Martin and Conor became separated from the group, ending up alone in the vast underwater terrain. Somehow, in the confusion, they descended deeper than their gas mixture allowed. The mistake led to both men losing consciousness, causing their regulators to slip from their mouths. They ultimately sank to the depth of 65 meters or 213 feet. The other divers only realized something was wrong after reaching the surface, noticing that Martin and Conor had not returned on time. A search was launched immediately, but when they were finally located, it was already too late. Their tragic story mirrors countless others linked to the Blue Hole, where skilled and cautious divers venture in, only to never return. But what exactly makes this site so deadly? It might be helpful to first explain exactly what a blue hole is. During the ice ages, sea levels were significantly lower, by as much as 100 meters or 330 feet compared to today. At that time, much of the Earth's land masses were exposed, revealing surface caves and sinkholes. Over time, rain eroded these limestone caves in the usual way. As sea levels rose, the process accelerated due to the corrosive action of salty seawater flowing over the rock. Many of these surface caves eventually collapsed, forming large, circular openings now submerged beneath the water's surface. These are essentially vertical caves under the sea. What's fascinating and a bit eerie is that the outer edge of these holes is made of more resilient rock that doesn't erode as easily as the inner portions. Within this stable realm, the holes plunge dramatically, often much deeper than the surrounding seafloor. A well-known example is the Great Blue Hole near Belize. Its edge is relatively shallow, at just 10 meters or 33 feet deep, but once you cross the rim, it drops vertically to a depth of 124 meters or 407 feet. This stark difference in depth creates the striking color contrast visible from above. Around the edges, the water appears as the bright blue typical of tropical seas, but the center becomes a dark, deep blue resembling the open ocean. Another effect of this extreme depth difference is poor water circulation within these sinkholes, particularly at the greater depths. In fact, many blue holes have bottoms entirely devoid of oxygen, making them lifeless, eerie voids compared to the vibrant marine ecosystem surrounding them. Blue holes can be found all over the world and offer unique diving conditions. They're often free from strong currents due to being isolated from surrounding waters, which removes one challenge for divers. Some are even located near the shoreline, where you can walk from the beach into shallow water and then descend hundreds of feet into the depths just a short distance away. These features make blue holes not only fascinating, but also highly accessible and convenient for divers. This ease of access, combined with their beauty, explains why they're so popular with scuba and free divers. However, it doesn't fully explain why these sites can be so deadly, especially the blue hole near Dahab, which has earned the grim nickname Diver Cemetery. Unfortunately, there isn't a straightforward answer to what makes this site so dangerous. It's unclear if the blue hole near Dahab is actually more lethal than other dive sites because no official records exist to track the number of dives or fatalities. Without this data, it's impossible to compare its fatality rate to the global average for diving. It could be inherently more dangerous, which would account for the high death toll. Alternatively, the number of fatalities might simply reflect the vast volume of dives conducted there. Regardless, the site's deadly reputation seems to attract divers rather than tour them. Its sinister allure, being both breathtakingly beautiful and perilous, is part of what draws people in. On shore, a memorial stands to honor some of the divers who have lost their lives in the blue hole. Ironically, many divers visit this somber display of plaques just before entering the water, hoping they won't become another recovery case for Turok like Martin and Connor. Tragically, the divers recovered represent only a fraction of those who have perished. The blue hole's size and depth mean that some bodies remain lost for extended periods. By the time they are discovered, decomposition often makes recovery inadvisable. Adding to the morbid fascination, divers frequently record their dives at the blue hole. Later, while reviewing the footage, they sometimes spot abandoned gear from lost divers resting among the sand or rocks on the seafloor. One explanation for the Dahab blue hole's danger may lay in its unique structure. From the surface, its walls narrow like a funnel as they descend. At a depth of 52 meters, or 170 feet, a large arch appears on the far side of the hole. This arch leads to a 26 meter or 85 foot tunnel sloping diagonally downward, eventually opening into the open ocean. Beyond the tunnel's exit, the depths drop rapidly in increments from 120 meters or 390 feet to an astonishing 800 meters, 2,600 feet. This complex and deceptive layout contributes to the site's perilous nature. Although there are several intermediate levels, the final drop-off in the blue hole leads directly to the ocean floor. At these extreme depths, only technical diving is possible, as regular air becomes toxic. This factor may contribute to the site's danger. The steep, rapid descent from the surface makes it deceptively easy for divers using regular air to go deeper than they realize. Before they know it, nitrogen narcosis can set in, causing confusion or unconsciousness. However, it's not only divers on regular air who have fallen victim to the blue hole. Take the case of Igor in 2011. A skilled and experienced diver, Igor had completed exactly 400 dives before his fateful trip to the blue hole. His plan was to execute a technical dive to 150 meters, about 50 meters shy of the hole's full depth. After entering the water, he made his way to the arch at 50 meters, then descended further. At 90 meters, he passed another diver who noticed Igor appeared unsteady but still received an okay signal from him. From there, Igor continued down 120 meters, then 150 meters, the deepest he had ever gone. Upon reaching a ledge at 150 meters, Igor began his ascent. However, things quickly started to unravel. At 130 meters, he began to hyperventilate, which escalated into a full-blown panic. In a desperate moment, Igor made a rapid ascent to the surface, skipping critical decompression stops along the way. Such an uncontrolled ascent from that depth is incredibly dangerous and often fatal, highlighting the risk of diving in the blue hole. As Igor ascended rapidly, the gases dissolved in his bloodstream due to the immense pressure at depth, which began expanding uncontrollably. By the time he broke the surface, the expanding gases would have been causing unbearable pain, obstructing blood flow throughout his body. As his head emerged from the water, Igor screamed in agony, but just a few moments later, he succumbed to his injuries and passed away. Igor became one of the few divers Tarek did not need to recover. Perhaps another factor contributing to the blue hole's danger is the leniency and enforcement of diving regulations in the area. While diving is somewhat regulated, financial incentives can often bypass safety measures. Most dive shops in the region are licensed, but not all. Moreover, the high competition between operators drives down the cost of dives, which sometimes leads to corners being cut. Instructors and guides, though generally trained and experienced, may be willing to overlook safety rules in exchange for a little extra money, creating risky conditions for inexperienced divers. Even with this, it's still far safer to dive with a professional than to attempt a solo dive. The most infamous incident at the Blue Hole is one many may already know about, but no discussion of this site feels complete without addressing it. This tragedy occurred in April 2000, involving a man named Yuri. A scuba diving instructor, Yuri traveled to Dahab to explore the region's renowned dive spots, including the Blue Hole, which had been a dream destination for him. Before leaving, Yuri's father had made him promise to avoid reckless or dangerous behavior. With that promise in mind, Yuri, though traveling alone, sought a diving partner upon arriving in Dahab. After spending a few hours wandering the streets and visiting various dive shops, he eventually found a local willing to accompany him. Soon after, Yuri and his newfound companion arrived at the Blue Hole and entered the water. Yuri documented his dive, recording a video that begins near the water surface. The footage captures the vibrant blue water, coral reefs, and colorful fish surrounding him, along with other divers in the vicinity. At one point, Yuri adjusts his camera, appearing to attach a lens cover or protective casing likely to shield it from the pressure he anticipated encountering. Once satisfied, he shifts his focus to two divers nearby, their regulators releasing streams of bubbles as they hover and seem to communicate silently. Yuri moves closer to these divers, nearly brushing against them before continuing onward. He points his camera towards the open water, capturing the vast, dark expanse below. From somewhere much deeper, additional bubbles rise to the surface, hinting at other divers far out of sight in the depths. Yuri begins to move towards the source of the rising bubbles in the distance. Let's skip ahead in the footage to where he stops adjusting his camera and starts his descent. At this point, Yuri redirects his focus towards another diver below him. This individual could be the local diver Yuri had enlisted to accompany him. The diver ahead is releasing a steady stream of bubbles which float upward and vanish. Yuri eventually swims past this person and shifts his gaze upward where sunlight glimmers faintly through the water's surface. Then, this focus returns downward to what appears to be the bottom of the hole. In reality, this bottom is part of the inner wall of the blue hole, and Yuri is following its contours as he descends. The water at this depth has grown noticeably darker compared to the surface above. At this point, we're going to allow the video to play uninterrupted so you can hear Yuri's breathing as he continues downward. Occasionally, the inner wall of the hole comes into view at the edge of the frame, but watch closely as the water grows progressively darker. Now's a good moment to mention that Yuri is diving with regular air. As he descends further, the effects of nitrogen narcosis would have been intensifying, impairing his judgment and coordination. Additionally, the increasing pressure at this depth would have significantly reduced his ability to control his buoyancy. The water surrounding Yuri is now so dark it's almost surreal. At one point, he checks his dive computer and it reads 81 meters, or 265 feet. For reference, diving with regular air isn't recommended beyond 40 meters, and Yuri has descended to nearly double that depth. In the following moments, Yuri appears to struggle as he moves along the ledge where he has come to a stop. It's hard to tell how aware he is of his situation. Soon, you'll hear the distinct hiss of air as he attempts to inflate his buoyancy control device. Tragically, Yuri has descended too deep, and the pressure has rendered his equipment ineffective. His gear is simply too heavy, and despite his attempts to ascend, he remains stuck. He flails briefly, possibly making a last-ditch effort to swim upward, but it's already too late. footage cuts off while Yuri is still desperately trying to navigate the horrifying situation unfolding around him.
Okay.
Roughly 40 minutes later, when Yuri hadn't surfaced, the grim reality of what had happened became clear to everyone. Yuri's parents were contacted soon after, and his father arrived in Dahab the following day. Determined to recover his son's body, he pleaded with local divers for assistance. Finally, Tarek stepped forward, volunteering for what would become the deepest recovery dive ever attempted at the time. Yuri was discovered laying face down at a depth of 91 meters or 298 feet, burdened by an excessive amount of weight that had contributed to his inability to ascend. In a tragic detail, Tarek noted that Yuri's buoyancy control device had ruptured during his desperate efforts to make himself more buoyant, rendering it completely ineffective. Yuri's body was eventually brought back to the surface, and all of his personal belongings, including his camera, were returned to his grieving parents. At the time, Tarek assumed the camera, which was rated for a maximum depth of 75 meters or 246 feet, would have been destroyed by the pressure. He had no reason to believe it had captured any usable footage. Sadly, as you've seen, the camera not only survived, but recorded everything. This footage was subsequently played in front of Yuri's mother and father, an experience that haunted everyone involved. Reflecting on it later, Tarek admitted that if he had known the camera was functional, he would have destroyed it himself to spare Yuri's family the additional pain. The final 5 seconds of the recording were inadvertently captured the next day when someone attempted to check if the camera was still operational. Today, Yuri's footage serves as a chilling warning to divers about the inherent dangers of scuba diving, particularly in places like the Blue Hole. What stands out most about the video is the abruptness with which everything changes. One moment the water is clear, calm, and inviting. The next, it's oppressive, pitch-black void. The transition is so sudden that by the time danger becomes apparent, it's already far too late. Perhaps this stark contrast is what makes the Blue Hole near Dahab so perilous. The tranquil conditions at the surface lull divers into a false sense of security, concealing the deadly challenges that lie beneath.
If you're enjoying this content, give this video a like and let us know in the comments below. Imagine a hidden cave concealed among jagged rocks with a mysterious underwater tunnel leading to a secret chamber. It's a place whispered about in local legends, a test of bravery for the daring, but a deadly trap for the unprepared. 5 friends ventured into this cave one fateful night, seeking adventure. What they found instead was terror beyond imagination. This is the chilling true story of the Cave of Death. On the warm evening of August 17, 2005, Stephen Hunley, a 21-year-old from Provo, Utah, gathered with 5 of his closest friends for dinner. The group chatted and laughed as young friends do until someone brought up the chilling tale of the secret cave. This cave was rumored to sit hidden in the mountains near Brigham Young University. The legend was well known in the area. A shadowy cavern tucked away from view where a concealed underwater tunnel led to a mysterious air pocket. Whispers spoke of this air pocket being the site of sinister rituals and, according to some, even human sacrifices. Most locals brushed it off as nothing more than a ghost story, a tale spun to scare hikers or adventurers, college students. But this night was different. Jennifer Galbraith, also 21, leaned forward, her eyes wide with conviction. "The cave is real," she announced. The room fell silent. Her friends gawked, laughing nervously. "Come on, Jen, you've never been to the secret cave," one of them teased. Jennifer didn't flinch. "I'm serious. I've been there. I've seen it, and I know what's inside." Now their skepticism turned to curiosity. Was she joking? Was it possible that this place dismissed as a myth, actually existed. Jennifer described her experience in detail, her voice steady. The cave, she explained, was on White Mountain, near the Seven Peaks golf course. Its entrance was hidden between a cluster of massive boulders, so discreet that anyone not specifically looking for it would walk right past. You had to climb down through this narrow gap, descending about 15 feet to reach the cave floor. From there, Jennifer said the cave narrowed significantly. The ceiling was so low that you'd have to crouch, sometimes nearly crawl, as you navigated the cramped passage. Flashlights were essential, as total darkness consumed the space beyond the entrance. The tunnel stretched about 100 feet before opening into a breathtaking sight, a pool of water, its surface shimmering like glass under a flashlight's beam. I've read about a lot of cave disasters, and let me tell you, once I hear you've got to squeeze through tight spaces, or you got to get on your stomach and, crawl your way through, I'm out. No way. That's where I draw the line. I wouldn't say I'm claustrophobic, but I know my limits. In caves, they don't forgive mistakes. What about you? Would you ever put yourself in that kind of a situation? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, back to the story. What made this cave infamous, Jennifer said, was the underwater tunnel. About 5 feet below the surface of the pool was a tiny opening, just large enough for a person to squeeze through. This underwater passage was around 15 feet long and led to an air pocket on the other side. Jennifer warned her friends that this was not a place meant for exploration. It wasn't a marked or sanctioned area, and authorities would likely shut it down if they knew it existed. Still, someone had discovered it long ago and tied a rope through the underwater tunnel, securing it to rocks and wood on either side to help brave souls pull themselves through. Jennifer admitted she had visited the cave months earlier with another group. While she had made it through the tunnel, she confessed she was terrified, and the water was ice cold, and the suffocating pressure of being underwater in total darkness had been overwhelming. I got to the other side, she said, but I was so cold I had to turn back almost immediately. By now, the group was captivated. Whether they believed her story entirely or not, her vivid description planted a seed of adventure and danger in their minds. They began calling it the Cave of Death, their fascination growing with each retelling. We should go there tonight, someone suggested, their excitement building. Stephen wanted to join, but he had to work the next day. Reluctantly, he parted ways with the group, leaving Jennifer and the others to their midnight adventure. Around 2:30 a.m., the 5 friends arrived at the golf course parking lot at the base of the journey to the cave, dressed casually in shorts and flip-flops. They set out under the faint glow of the moonlight, flashlights in hand. Jennifer led the way, her confidence reassuring them. As they climbed, doubt crept into some of their minds. Was this just an elaborate prank? But then Jennifer stopped and pointed to the cluster of boulders. There it is, she said. The others approached, peering between the rocks. Sure enough, there was a narrow opening leading into the darkness. Flashlights illuminated the descent, revealing the cave floor about 15 feet below. Excitement and apprehension buzzed through the group as they climbed down. But not everyone felt the same. Joseph Ferguson, the oldest of the group at 26, hesitated. I think I'll stay here, he said. I'll keep watch. The others teased him briefly, but respected his decision. They turned on their flashlights, crouched low, and began their journey into the unknown. Joseph sat near the entrance, his ears tuned to the muffled voices of his friends as they disappeared deeper into the cave. Gradually, the sounds faded, leaving him alone in the still night. An hour passed, then two. Joseph began to worry. He climbed down to the cave's entrance and he called out, his voice echoing into the void. No response. He strained to hear any sound, footsteps, laughter, anything. But there was only silence. Fighting growing panic, Joseph called the police. When rescuers arrived, they were stunned to find the cave. Its hidden entrance and treacherous conditions made it a hazard, unlike any they had encountered. Using pumps, they began to lower the water level in the tunnel and adding air into the hidden chamber beyond, hoping to save whoever may still be alive. What they found was devastating. Jennifer's body was kind of wedged halfway through the underwater tunnel, blocking the way. Behind her were the other three, trapped in a horrific sequence. Investigators pieced together the tragedy. The group had made it into the air pocket, likely exhilarated by their accomplishment, but when it was time to leave, Jennifer led the way. She entered the underwater tunnel first, with the others close behind. About halfway through, Jennifer became stuck in the passageway because it was too narrow. The conditions were too unforgiving, and unable to move forward or back, she drowned. The others, unaware of what was happening ahead, followed closely, trapping themselves in the tight, lightless tunnel. Panic set in with no way to retreat and no visibility. They succumbed one by one. We may never know what was going through their minds just before or even during the incident. Why were they so close together in that narrow tunnel? Were they afraid of being the last one left in the air pocket chamber? And why didn't the last person turn around and then go back when they couldn't get through? If they had returned to the chamber, maybe a few others could have followed and survived. It's impossible to say for sure, and it leaves so many unanswered questions. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. So anyway, the recovery team was shaken. It was clear this cave was a death trap, offering no margin for error. After the bodies were recovered, authorities decided the only course of action was to seal the cave permanently. They poured cement into the entrance and covered it with rocks, ensuring no one else could ever attempt the perilous journey. In the aftermath, officials reflected on the tragedy. Could this have been prevented if the cave had been discovered and sealed earlier? Perhaps, but for Jennifer and her friends, it was too late. The legend of the Cave of Death remains a chilling reminder of the risk of venturing into the unknown. What started as a night of curiosity and adventure ended in an unspeakable loss. That wraps it up for today. Thank you so much for watching and spending time with me. It truly means the world. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out. Each week, we dive into the unexplained, strange disappearances, true crime, tragic accidents, paranormal encounters, cryptids, and more. If there's a story you'd like me to cover, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your suggestions. I can't wait to see you next time as we explore the natural and unnatural mysteries of our world, luring you into a beautiful nightmare. Until then, sending you blessings and positive energy, love.